Okay, once again, thank you, Cicely, and hope everyone's okay today. So today's topic is about swarms of locusts, floods, heat waves, heavy snow, etc. Let's talk climate change and our well-being. So what is climate change? Climate change is a change in global or regional climate patterns, and in particular, a change apparent from the mid to late 20th century onwards and attributed largely to the increased levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced using fossil fuels. Here are some facts about climate change. The worst impacts of climate change could be irreversible by 2030. The 20 warmest years on record have been in the past 22 years. More than 1 million species are at risk of extinction by climate change. Climate change is already happening, and it's detrimental to human life too. Many leaders still aren't taking it seriously. These are some causes of climate change. Humanity's increased use of fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and gas, generate electricity, run cars, and other forms of transport and power, manufacturing, and industry. Deforestation, because living trees absorb and store carbon dioxide. Increasingly aggressive agriculture, which emits greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide. These are some impacts of climate change. Damage to your home from things such as floods or wildfires, more expensive home insurance. Outdoor work could become unbearable from events such as heat waves, higher electric bills and more blackouts, rising taxes, more allergies and other health risks. Food will be more expensive and variety will suffer. Water quality could suffer. Outdoor exercise and recreational sports will become more difficult. Disruptions in travel. And here are some ways to limit climate change. Power your home with renewable energy. Drive electric or fuel efficient vehicles. Invest in energy efficient appliances. Reduce water waste. Actually eat the food you buy and waste less. And one of the most important things to do is speak up and spread the awareness of climate change. So I'll leave it there and I'll pass it on to Cicely again, and thank you.
Yes, Tombe, thank you so much for taking us through that beautiful introduction. And just to say that we don't have Shalom and Stella today to have taken us through the other parts of it, but I just want you to take interest in the slide that I'm sharing. I'm trying to share the, to have a full view of it, but it's proving to be difficult here. But I hope you can see. You can see those images. To all of us, they are familiar at different times of the year or the years that have gone by. And they all have some impact on us or huge impacts on us, both directly and indirectly. Now, currently we are experiencing the fires, the one in the middle. Now we have all seen what is happening in Greece, in Italy, California, Australia, and so many other parts of the country. Just this morning, the news was that yesterday in Sicily, the island of Sicily, the temperatures were as high as 48 degrees. In Italy, they are experiencing the worst of the heat waves that they have ever come across. So you can see this is right on our face. We don't have to read about it. We just have to see or to listen to the news that we have every day. Now with the snow, we are all familiar with the snow, what happens in winter. A couple of years ago, some of us took so many hours to get to Reading town. A journey of 5 minutes took more than 6 hours to get there. Now, what about the storms? We are all very familiar with the storms and the locusts. We are going to watch a very short video clip on the locusts in some parts of our continent. Africa, so to say, and specifically in Kenya, this was an experience that was there in the beginning of 2020, which left, a lot of damage. Some of us still dealing with that. So really, that's just to explain the magnitude of the issue we are talking about here. And it will be great to hear more of what it is that we are dealing with. But before we get into that, let me try my best to share the post that Stella would have shared. I hope it works. If it doesn't, we can, respond to it in our through our chat room. But let me try and see what happens. Just bear with me.
It's coming and going.
Can you see anything from your end?
Yeah, it is there.
Yeah, it's a different one. I think what you can see. I'm
This is
trying
shame.
to get the right one.
This is shame and
Shame and
well-being.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for exploring climate change and our well-being.
All right.
Let me try again. Oh, okay, technology. This is the beauty of having young people around.
Well, you have muted James, Cicely. You have muted James.
No, I'm back now, Grace. Thank you
right.
so much. But I was muted earlier, Cicely. That's why I wasn't able to say anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we go ahead, then James, you can, as I try to work this out, you can say hello to everybody.
Good morning, everybody, and I hope you had a wonderful week. I know the weather has not been great consistently, but we probably managed to catch up some sunlight one way or the other. So as we all know, the topic this morning is about how we maintain the environment and also how we can be part of that integrity as well in terms of managing the changes that is taking around or occurring around us. I personally can relate to this because a few years ago, most of you would have heard about the mudslide in my country, Sierra Leone, where a lot of people were buried, by mud because of the changes that's taking place in our climate and also the weather condition. And also recently, there are a few villages in my own district, the east of the country also had a lot of damages to schools and hospitals and personal buildings. So we, as member of that community, are contributing. So we can see how the chain work. You can't say because I'm in England, it's not going to affect me. It can affect you if you're coming from Africa, so or any part of the world that climatic changes can affect, geographically. So we really need to treat this with some kind of seriousness and to be part of it. I know there are so many other priorities, but it's important for us to prioritize this. So that's the reason why this is really important for us. So again, these are very difficult topics to talk about sometimes, and people have had some personal issues or impacted upon personally by the climatic changes or condition that we're talking about today. So please don't forget to look after yourself and make sure that your well-being is key. In fact, the reason why we're here is because of our well-being, because if the environment is okay for you to exercise, that is going to promote healthy well-being. So it's important. So let's talk about it and let's free to share any challenges, any experiences, whether good or bad. And then in the end, perhaps we begin to look at how we go forward with this. But thank you so much, everybody. And I hope we will be able to spend this time together in a way that we give us some positive feeling at the end. Thank you.
So, James, thank you. I still can't share this post from this end.
We can
yes,
see
then appreciate our young people when they are there. It says it all. But we can use our chat rooms to share our views. I have the questions with me. So the first question is, how much aware are you about climate change? How much aware are you about climate change? The first response is 80%. The second one is 40%. and the third one is 10%. So how much aware are you about climate change? 80%, 40%, and 10%. So put your responses on the chat. And James and the team, perhaps you can have a look at that and see what is being put in and we'll discuss it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cicely, could you repeat the question, please? The choices, sorry.
Yeah, the question is, how much aware are you about climate change?
Yes.
And number one is 80%, 2,
Yep.
40%, 3, 10%.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad to see a few 80% there.
And at the moment, the 40% seem to be in the lead.
Okay. All right.
80%.
All right. So yeah, let's do one question at an, after each time to avoid the complexity or the complicating it further.
So
So
as Cicely was saying, Cicely was saying that how much do you know of the climatic changes around you or around us in this world? And the answers 80% I know, 40% I know, or 10%. So at the moment, the 40% seems to be in the lead.
No, I think the 80% is leading from the chat room.
Okay, is it?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's a positive thing. That's quite positive. Better than I thought. So that means we are educating ourselves. So brilliant. At least there is not 10%. And perhaps if we had 100%, I wonder how many people would have put themselves at that. Of course, there is always room for continuous improvement.
Some people wrote 80% and more. So that means there are people who are aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yes. That then puts us at a very good place. And I can see Victor smiling because, as a community, that means a lot.
And 24 of us, so 80%, really. I mean, that's a big number and big awareness or knowledge.
Yes. Yeah, okay. And we know how much churches are doing actually to do with this. So it's not limited, to, it's inclusive when it comes to who is dealing with what or who needs to be aware of what. So the other question is, how excited are you by the conversation on climate change? 100%, 50%, 20%.
Yeah, let's spoil it now. False witnesses rise up. And late in my charge, things I knew.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, how excited are you by the conversation on climate change? 100%, 50%, 20%.
My soul.
Thank you.
Perhaps in another word, how open are you to this conversation? How willing are you to talk about these climatic changes? Because sometimes topics like this can be very difficult for us to talk about. It's normally like the elephant in the room, but that excitement, that motivation, that willingness is what we're really talking about here. So so you have 100%, 50%, and 20%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The highest is 100%, quite a few of you, a few 50%, 50%. Would be interesting to hear the 50%. I don't know who put that, what that means to them. Anybody who has put 50%?
Hello.
I am one of those who put myself 50%. And the reason being, I find it to be a very dry subject matter, but because of the impact, and especially of what we are seeing now, my attitude is changing and changing very, very fast. Hence the conversation.
Even unto my
Oh, this is Grace. I'm all for climate change talks and I follow them very closely. I put 50% because it's because of the inaction that takes place after big meetings and discussions. Not much comes out of them. I mean, you find now we've got these billionaires going up to space. How much are they, fossil fuel are they using, you know? And then we also maybe get our governments and people, we sit and say we want to talk about climate change, but we have 6 cars, we travel instead of using the bus, we are going by car into town instead of using park and ride. So it's the inaction that makes me say, well, yes, we are happy about it, but we're not really doing much about it.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. However, the reason why we're here as grassroots community is to really start activating ourselves at grassroots level, family level, you know, educating our own children, ourselves around some of those big ideas that you are expressing there. Yeah, there are big farms, big government, rich people, but if we bring our own knowledge down to our own little family units, what are we doing? What can we do? You know, in my church recently, we're talking about how we can have environmental integrity by changing some of our habits, you know, walk to church rather than drive to church and all of those things. So yeah, we can say a lot, we can do a lot. So thank you for bringing that. It's really good for people to know that why we are so excited when we see big people, rich people, actually not doing the right thing. It can actually affect our motivation, but please, let's keep our motivation active as a community.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for expounding on that, James. And that calls for personal responsibility here. Again, we are here to educate ourselves. And the last question is, man's activity has adversely contributed to the climate change. Man's activity has adversely contributed to the climate change. A, agree. B, don't agree. And C, not sure. Somebody have their microphone on.
Sorry, Cicely, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Man's activity has contributed, man's activity has adversely contributed to the climate change. Agree, don't agree, not sure.
So man's activity has adversely contributed to
climate change.
Okay, so I agree.
What's the option? Sorry.
The
we got
options are
A, agree, B, not agree, and then C, not sure. You know, basically the question Cicely is saying is the change is taking place in our climate being responsible for by us? Are we the one responsible, man, human being? Are we the one that is causing the climate to change? So if you agree that you are in the A category, if you don't agree, you are in the B category. If you're not quite sure, then you haven't made up your mind, you are in the C category. So that's the question.
what is coming through? Agree on the fence. Don't know. That's yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, okay. I'm not sure. Maybe not sure. Yeah. Okay, keep bringing them on. But as we continue, let's hear. I like the one on the fence. if we were on percentage, perhaps that would have been 50%. So, but what does that mean? Not on the fence. And I believe that was Victor.
On the fence, I think I'm not saying no, and I'm not saying yes, because it may be as a climate change may be as a result of our improving lifestyles and the disregard for consequences because we are aspiring for the next best thing. So is it our action? Is it a need? I may begin to sound like a climate change denier, but that's not the issue. It's our contribution. We're having kids, the population is increasing, we're putting more strain on the earth. People are greedy, yes. So if you say it's man's responsibility, some may beg to differ. It may be the responsibility of a few countries or of a few people within the whole. I don't know. That's why I put the rejoinder of don't know.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, Mr. Roman.
I like that, and that's why we need to know more.
Interesting.
Yeah, thank you. I see, yeah, Annette.
Sorry, before Annette comes in, just to really go back to what Mr. Kuruma is saying, I think this is really interesting for us because somehow development, bettering your status, being prosperity, we all fight for and everything along the lines. You tread on so many things to get to that top, and to achieve what you want to achieve. And he actually mentioned some good pointers there. Said the consequences that we are not aware of. When you sit in your car driving to church or to the gym to exercise and sit in your car to come back home, it's really consequences. What are they? So, and this is a forum where we talk about this thing openly from our own cultural understanding. And I think that's really important because sometimes when people say, I'm not quite sure, it's really important to chase what is it that you're not sure about. And when we talk about this openly today, maybe Victor Kuruma will go home thinking just maybe I'm beginning to be part of it, and I know he's part of this anyway. So that's the reason why he's here. So, and that's Wellbeing Hub. These are some of the topics that we'll be looking at because we need to be part of this drive because as a community, it's affecting us directly here and also indirectly in our different African countries. So thank you, Mr. Kuruma, for at least activating the conversation as we go along.
Yes, Annette, your hand was up.
Yes, just interesting conversation. Yes, I do agree that we have a responsibility for what's happening within climate change. Big governments, they're allowing people to cut down the rainforest. Well, we know that that's the lung of the earth, the green forest. A lot of it's been devastated. They've obliterated. Look at in Brazil and other places in the world that's been done. And therefore, we are going to see the effects. If we think about all the other wars that we've had and the amount of mega bombs they drop in different places all over the world, what does it do to the earth? There's a lot that we have to look at and that we are responsible for. I mean, it's not natural we get earthquake, yes, but is it natural for us to be dropping bombs here, there, and everywhere? In the sea, every part of existence for us, the sea, the land, the air, has been affected. And who does that? Us. Yes, there are some good things that, as Victor said, to improve our lives, and that is great. But to the extreme, they're turning everything, the waterways, everything. It's just, get whatever money you can get out of. When they cut down all the trees and they farm within, you know, the forest, what good is that going to do for us? Yes, it's quick money for the big conglomerates, but it's, you know, it's not doing us. And this is to me, that's my understanding. And I believe that have a big impact on what's going on in climate change. And it's just happened now. If you look over the last 30, 40 years, what's been happening, all the things that are happening. I remember when I see on the TV how many bombs being dropped in Iraq and different places like that. When you see in the rocks, when they're devastated, you know, how do I know that's not affecting our climate, you know? So that's really my contribution.
And thank you, Annette, for bringing that up, because we are going to hear more of that. And really, that's why we needed this platform. And although we might appear to be speaking to ourselves, towards the end, one of our community great champions, Helen, will be joining us too. And she says she just wants to listen so that she can, and she will know what the issues are, and perhaps, you know, educate ourselves more going forward. I'm glad to see that we are almost there. If you remember the first question, we are 80% aware. So, but there is always room for improvement. So educating ourselves goes a long way. Now, one of the greatest impacts is what we are seeing, the fires. And one of our young people who could not be here today sent me the video clip that I'm going to share now, just to help us understand the impact that the climate change is having on us. And if you think about our churches as well, what does that mean to us? And what is it? You know, what are the churches doing? And perhaps in your respective churches, you will have done something about it in terms of conversations or just raising the awareness, but it will be interesting to hear. So for now, let me share this video clip with you. You can see that?
I think it's coming on.
It's coming up, okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
that's fine. All right, you can see it now?
Yeah.
No, it's still loading from my side.
Okay. So let's hear. So this was one of the selections from Stella and Shalom, who could not be with us today.
Biblical, but as the world grapples with the COVID pandemic, the continent of Africa is facing another plague, locusts. As Nick Schifrin reports, the small insects pose a serious threat to food security throughout the region.
In East Africa, the air carries two plagues. Locusts, swarms with as many as 50 billion insects. As COVID-19 threatens the people, locusts threaten people's livestock and food.
They are being a menace, eating our grass and even getting into our homes. When we slaughter our livestock,
Look
we
like
find
it's taking
locust
long time
faces
to
in their
upload.
stomachs.
I don't
Without
know
a doubt, they are affecting our health,
Oh, you
our
can
animals'
see.
health, and the
No,
environment.
We are hearing and seeing.
Is your network, James? Is the network from your end?
All right then.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll continue.
Yeah. Please go on.
In February, 8 East African countries experienced an initial swarm, the largest for parts of the region in 70 years. And now a new
Anthony,
wave
maybe
is
climatic
20
change is
times
affecting
larger
my
than the
network.
first wave.
There are swarms that are, it's not uncommon to be, let's say, the size of Manhattan in New York City. So they can be very big. In one day, that swarm can eat the same amount of food as everybody in New York and California combined.
Keith Cressman is the Food and Agriculture Organization's senior locust forecasting officer. He says in a region that is already struggling with food security, more than 33 million people are now food insecure and require assistance.
Because this region is very, very vulnerable. For the past 3 years, they faced droughts. This year, they faced heavy rains and floods. So already, you know, they're living in a very precarious situation.
Pesticides can fight the locusts, and the FAO is appealing for millions of dollars of aid to deliver more. But border closures because of COVID-19 can slow down deliveries. And locals gathering to combat the locusts, often without success, can spread coronavirus. The UN is instead pushing for the use of biopesticides and remote data collection, and is working with governments to ensure the people who are fighting the locusts can travel despite travel restrictions.
The governments realize, not only COVID-19 is serious, but also locust is serious. So they have given waivers to all of those involved in the locust campaign, and they're considered as essential services.
The outbreak originated in the Arabian Peninsula, where heavy rains in 2018 and 2019 created the insect's ideal breeding ground. Climate change might also be making the problem worse.
There's 8 cyclones in 2019. Usually there's none or one. So, obviously something's going on with the weather. It could be climate change, but whatever it is, if we see this trend continuing, it's going to mean that there's going to be more desert locust upsurges like we're facing this year.
While the world fights the coronavirus, much of East Africa is battling a second threat with no reprieve in sight. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.
Wow. It's good to say that that is not a story. That's something that happened in 2020, just before the COVID came in. And actually in my own home area, it was real. So it's not a story, that's what happened. But let's hear your thoughts on, that video clip. Any views watching that?
Can I?
Yes, please, Dr. Kanini.
Yes, I think what that video clip tried to show is that we may have different ways of the problems that come with climate change in different places. Let's say, for example, the way the clip presents the problem of food and locusts and drought and floods, those type of things are very common in, say, the developing countries like East Africa. And here we have what we are calling heat waves, snow, and those type of things. Myself, I have a small history of the way these things happen, especially from the point of view of the church, because I have worked in what is called church development programs. And most of the activities that church-based development programs do is on relief. And relief is giving people food. And this is something that we may call is a response to a result of a trigger of a disaster or an emergency. So these things that we see, swarms of locusts and those type of things, are indicators of the way things are changing, or a big problem that is about to come. And the problem is that we don't have early warnings, or if the early warnings are there, because in most cases they are there, we don't have the technologies to interpret these warnings. And therefore, we don't prepare, we don't have the skills to respond, we don't have the finances, we don't have the policies, and those type of things. And that is the major thing with East Africa, for example, because when that clip talked too much about food problem. The point they are trying to deliver is the world should be ready to feed Africa because they would be deprived of food because of these problems that come in. So we must know that the major problem that is presented by climate change disasters or this other type of disasters like locust is mainly food related and well-being for the African people. And I have already said that the problem is different in rich and poor countries. Even the causes of the problems are different. For example, I think Anita, I think Annette presented earlier about these big things about technologies and wars and what they do and the cutting down of trees and what they do to climate change and to Africa. And for us, in a small way, for example, in the church, what we do is respond by giving relief in terms of food, and then encouraging small development activities, like asking people to plant more trees and to stop farming using chemicals and stop eating processed foods and do something we call organic farming and zero tilling farming, where you don't dig out the soil, but you do a method of not digging out that soil, but trying to promote what we call ecosystems or ecology, small animals and plants interrelating one another. So this problem of climate change has a different impact in the rich countries and in the poor countries. And as we can see, it is said carbon dioxide, the emission of carbon dioxide is the greatest enemy of the cause of the climate change, because the carbon dioxide emitted into the air increases the carbon dioxide and decreases oxygen. And therefore, as a result, what we call temperatures keep on rising and the world is heating up. So the systems, the rains, the way the rains were patterned are no longer working that way, but they are working abnormally. And then if we ask ourselves, where does the carbon come from? Who produces most of the carbon? And who are the producers of this gas, which heats up the air and increases the temperatures? That is the problem. And the question is, how much can we do in poor countries to stop that process of increasing the temperatures, the global temperatures? Well, we can do our little job by planting a few trees, but I think the impact is very small. We can also do our small thing of trying to grow organic plants and trying to stop digging our garden and stop driving in our cars. And you can compare the number of cars that poor countries have compared with the aeroplanes and things like that. And this is a major, I think already the problem as it is now is at the global level, because somebody said, I think yesterday in the TV, they were told they refused to listen. Now they are jumping when the problem is almost beyond repair. But we can do whatever little we can in our own, including also having faith that the big players will come in and do the necessary. And in our part, those who come from the poor countries, we must struggle to develop technologies that can help us to diagnose problems that are related to this climate change and do actions which will actually help in mitigating those things and help us reconstruct our lives, that it can benefit from a natural way of living, which will help a little bit of that. I wanted to say that because I have been involved in some of these activities. In Africa, actually, in 1997, there was an intention of establishing a training center for disaster management at African University, Mutale in Zimbabwe. And I was part of those people who participated in the discussion of planning an African-wide disaster management program. Mainly, we took a few people to train at Mutale in Zimbabwe, but I think the program did not go on well. It was started in 1997. So this is a major problem, and maybe we can do as little as we can. Thank you.
Wow. Dr. Kanina, thank you for being so detailed there, in a very, very good way. And this is the kind of information perhaps we are lacking as a community, and we may have it and perhaps not sharing enough or making ourselves aware of all this. And what I picked on there is it's not only a political issue or related, but also economic and social in many ways. A few weeks ago, actually, I did hear somebody from one of the parties justify the reason why the coal mining and the industries in the Midlands were closed. It was to do, according to them, that the Prime Minister then, who was Margaret Thatcher, had foreseen the problem we are experiencing today. But of course, we know the problems that caused to the people there then, and that problem still continues. So you wonder, is it political, is it economic? But at the end of the day, the implications, we are all experiencing it. We are all affected by the implications. So interesting to hear more. Yes, Victor.
And this is where the debate gets a little bit complicated. We all know that the mines were not closed for climate change reasons back then. And this is where, I was talking about not sure where the responsibility is. If we take, let's take the Bible as a reference point. I know we're not all Christians, but just to map out the existence of humanity. People were farmers right from the start. They were tilling the land, and I'm sure all those activities still remain the same. Yeah, and our people still, brush their farms, burn the shrubs, and till the land. But when you consider their action, which is for subsistence, and weigh that against how farming is done, intensive farming is done by the Western countries, you begin to wonder, well, who's causing more damage? Is the poor farmer who's doing his farming adding to the problem, or is it part of what nature would have accommodated? When you compare the fact that when they say they farm in the West, you're talking about miles, not acres of farming. That land is reduced to a grass field, if you like, extending for miles on end, especially if you go to somewhere like America. And that is not enough. They're now taking it across to poorer countries and buying huge swathes of land. For example, in Sierra Leone, my country, the Chinese have bought acres and acres and acres of land which they're converting to their own use, which would be destructive to the forest and ecosystem of the area. But nobody cares. Is it the responsibility of the people, or is it the responsibility of the government, who are the decision makers in that regard? So, and you know, like I said, that's where it gets a little bit complicated as to where the problem really lies, because even within you know, that's the in the Western world, if you listen to those that are benefiting from exploiting the land, they would say, oh, there's no problem like climate change. And those that are suffering because of it, those are the ones that would say, yes, we have a problem. And the problem is now taken seriously, because most of the disasters that we're hearing now was taking place in the poorer countries. But the ice caps are melting, floods are happening ever so regularly in the West as it is in the poorer countries. So it's only now that they're beginning to realize that, oh, the game is up. We need to backtrack. And I mentioned earlier about development. Annette made reference to the rainforest being cut down, which is true. But then we rush to buy the furniture that is made from those products. So anyway, it is complicated. I think the real thing is, well, what can we do to minimize our own impact in our own way on the environment?
Wow, really, really interesting to hear. And yeah, it is complex, and each one has to do their bit. And this is where the problem is. If I'm doing my bit and somebody else is not doing, then nothing much is achieved. So education is key to this. Yes, Annette.
Yeah, I agree with what Victor said, but as regards to what product we buy, we purchase, does everybody look at the label where it's coming from? Does everybody know where it is? At the end of the day, it's the big conglomerate to put it out there. You don't have a choice of where you buy your furniture from. Someone's got their, yeah, okay. So it's very difficult for your consumers like ourselves to try and find out, each time you go into the shop, you scrutinize every item, what you buy, where it comes, where all the raw materials come from. So again, it's the people who are in charge, the people who have the money, the people who can, go to a poorer country because economically, they say they're going to provide jobs for people. So it's our governance, our government who make these decisions. It's not just the farmer or the person who just tilled the land, providing a food for the village. This is worldwide, everywhere. And people, it's all to do with money. And it's only, as Victor says, now that it's coming home, people are taking notice. The people who have the power are taking notice to have, a climate summit. Now they're looking at it. For years and years, they've been having climate summit, and they never carry out what they say they're going to do. It's not just the local people who do what they do to live off the land, to take care of their family. It's all the other aspects of what big power, big money does. And that's how I view this. Thank you.
Fantastic. And, talk of fair trade. We look at the things we are buying and where they are coming from. And, that one, the fair trade, you think that, the impact or the benefits will go back to the country. But I'm not sure how much goes back there. For example, in renting a room, how many of you find Kenyan tea? You go to the different cafe areas and you find Kenyan tea or Kenyan coffee. How much of that goes to the poor farmer? And if you think about the input they have, perhaps all that is being counted as part of the damage that it is having on the climate change, or rather the climate itself. But how long has it taken for it to be acknowledged? Yeah, so it's all these things to think about. One more comment before I bring Nisa in to give us a very, very good update in this subject matter.
Hello, it's me again, Grace. So I'll just,
yes, hello, Grace, and I see Constance as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like Annette was saying, I think it was to begin with me. So in a small way, one can make a difference. I don't have to go and buy new clothes every so often, you know. I can go maybe to the charity shop or just recycle my old clothes with other people. And I don't really have to go and buy new furniture as such. There's furniture in the charity shops. Or I could ask I'm sure there are groups where you can share things for free. You can go and collect within the councils or estates, where you can put your name down and you can go and look for things to buy or to get for free, you go and collect. So it's having that mindset as well, that I don't really need to get a brand new thing. I can use something as long as it's usable, or even have an organization where people can refurbish things and then maybe sell them to be part of community work again. So we have to change our mindset.
Wow, how that's very, very powerful. So it starts with you. And remember, we always say being the change that you want to see, it is starting with you in those small ways. And actually not small, you can imagine the impact that will have in the long run to the communities that we live in. So Grace, thank you so much for that. Constance?
Well, I just want to give us great hope at this time in relation to climate change, because what climate change really means is that the earth, which was created by our creator God, the flora and the fauna of the earth is being ruined. But I think it was Victor who said that nobody cares. And that's not really true, because in addition to lots of human beings caring, and we're having this conversation today, which is an indication that many of us care, God himself cares about what happens to the earth. And if we were to look at the book of Revelation, which was written, I think, in 108, the first century, maybe 50 AD or so by John. In the book of Revelation, chapter 11, you look at the very last clause in verse 18, and in this chapter, the writer is talking about all the things, all the judgments that are going to be done in the world. And in this very last verse 18, the last clause, it says, and God is going to bring to ruin those ruining the earth. So we can see from this verse here that climate change is not a modern phenomena. It's something that was prophesied about, which indicates that something was going on even at that time in the first century AD. So in as much as we're having lots of problems now and lots of people are going to die because of starvation and what have you, the creator of this world, of this earth, he has a plan, and he says in his writings that he is going to bring ruin to those people who are ruining the earth. So in this, we have tremendous hope that it's not going to go on forever, that the creator himself is going to bring an end to it in his own time. Thank you.
Constance, thank you so much. And I noticed the point Victor has clarified there, to do with the government's decision and all the rest of it. But also, the beginning of the clip that we watched, there was a reference around the faith yeah, the difficulties and the, you know, all these scary account of events and how they relate to our faith. And you talking about that there, Constance, makes, you know, we begin to ask ourselves questions that are relevant in terms of making a difference to avoid most of these things. But also, should we just let them happen as they have been prophesied, or what is it that we need to do, to be aware of, or to do something to avoid the worst coming? So on that note, I will bring Nisa in. I believe there is a strategy within the council. It would be nice to be aware of it so that we do the right things. Over to you, Nisa.
Cecily. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. And a very, very important topic, climate change. We are feeling it everywhere, globally as well as nationally. And I would like, actually, this is something I've just learned, because I think all of you know that I've just started working for the council. So because of this topic, then I search and Google and read about that Reading Council actually declared a climate emergency in February 2019. I think this is something probably all of you have heard, and maybe Victor, you're aware about this. And to follow up that declaration of climate emergency, Reading Borough Council then developed a new Reading Climate Emergency Strategy that covers 2020 to 2025 to achieve the goal of what is it called? A net zero carbon resilient Reading by 2030. So the benefits of taking action on climate change, according to the documents, which I can share with you if you want to read it. It's about 63 pages. The benefits of taking actions on climate change, from the economic benefits, it's clean and inclusive growth in the local economy, and then social benefits, there's improved air quality, healthier diets, environmental benefits, better access to green space and nature. So fast forward to now, because that has been launched in 2020. So where are we at, and what have been achieved so far? We have the spoke lead, RBC lead member for environment is Councillor Tony Page. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's still him. He acknowledges that it's not going to be easy to meet the target of 2030, but it doesn't mean that the council is not striving towards that. And the fact that we do now, I don't really live in Reading, but it's been applied to have the food waste collection separately. So that is also part of the strategy from the document 2020 to 2025. And then as well as like having more of green space, spending on Green Park and West Reading stations, and creating more access for cyclists and also pedestrians, and having more green space around the city. So far, that is what's been achieved, and it's an ongoing process. And there's also, I'm not sure if you are aware, but I can also share that there is a readingcan.org.uk. It's a website, and their aim is to help Reading reach net zero of carbon print by 2030. And it's a very, very useful website, because it helps, it gives you tips and what can you do as an organization, and what can you do as an individual to help reduce our carbon footprint in the planet. I think that'd be it. Oh, hang on, and one more, sorry, and it's COVID related. We are having Held on the Move event tomorrow at the warehouse, Cumberland Road, between 12 to 6. Everyone is welcome to come there for health checks, also mental health support, We have also Cancer Champion if you want to have a conversation about cancer. And of course, the COVID vaccine also being offered, and it's Pfizer. And I will share that in the chat as well. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Lisa, thank you so much for bringing those updates to us. Very, very useful. Is there anybody with a question for Lisa with regards to the 2025 strategy? I'm sure something will come up, Lisa, so stay tuned, I would say. And yes, lovely to see Helen with us here. And Helen, yeah, we've talked a lot about the subject matter. And the good news is that at least 80% of us and more are aware of the climate change. And in terms of how excited we are about this conversation, almost 100%. But there is that room for improvement, which is why we need to educate ourselves. So I will bring James in. James, if you can come in and give us the usual tips around our well-being and the climate change itself, which is what our focus is, will be brilliant. And for the last 10 minutes, we will give Helen to speak to us. So James, over to you.
Well, thank you all for all the contributions and all the information you've shared. I think it's really important for all of us to understand the mechanism of the climatic changes or condition around all of us. And I think that's what everybody is talking about today. So I look at the health issues really around climate change. And I know a lot of people have mentioned it anyway. So we talk about how things are becoming more globalized. For any infection, for example, the COVID infection came and took the whole world. It didn't actually just stop in any one country. So most countries in the world were affected. So that's another thing. Perhaps, I don't know whether it's related to climatic change or anything. So I'm looking at the health issues anyway. I mean, there are so many other areas to look at, but from a health perspective, working for the NHS and BHFT, it's important for us to have this connection going so that people know. And also, we hear a lot about the coming back of diseases that have been eradicated for quite a long time is coming back. We don't know whether there's any contribution that is apportioned to climatic change, that these illnesses are coming back, And just recently, we're hearing a lot of rumors around, in fact, in Guinea, which is a neighboring country to my own country, as it's beginning to experience another bug or virus, which is actually another crisis that is coming up in that country, and also probably will affect my country and all some of those West African countries as well. So we don't know whether these are all related to climatic changes. So it's really important to look at all of this as well. And in most industries where antibiotics and industrial farming are also taking place, we know so many people have mentioned it, and Annette spoke about it, Constance spoke about it as well, that can also impact on our climate. So it's really important for us to bear some of these things in mind. Yes, most countries in Africa might not be, but it's important for us to share some of this information so that people can be taught and also educated appropriately around some of these developments. And when we look at landscaping also, what are the regulations? Are people following the regulations? Are people doing the right thing to maintain our environmental integrity? It's really important for us also. And these are things that we can, in our own little way, contribute to as well, because we all have gardens sometimes, and all of those things. Most of us come from farming families in Africa. It's really about how we share information with people so that we educate them. And also the need for better diagnostic and also how to prevent illnesses and innovative treatment. All of these can also come with side effects of harming the environment. So it's really important for us, in as much as we're looking for cure and things that can make our life better, is for us to be aware of certain challenges that can bring to the public health. And it's also important to also learn lessons from the from COVID-19, so we know exactly what are the lessons to learn from and how we can manage that. Now we are beginning to come out of lockdown. It's important for us to bear that in mind as well. So it's really important for us to keep that in check. So when we come to our own well-being, really it's about what is making your well-being consistently okay, and activities. Somebody mentioned about all the arrows: recycle clothes, recycle your shoes, your furniture, readjust your mindset, redo this, reuse this. These are all really important issues because we need to. How many times do you make a cup of tea? Can you reduce that to maybe a few times, you know, because you're using electricity and all of those things. And like Cicely was saying, how many times do we use the Kenyan tea or coffee or fair trade and all of those things? Are we helping when we do those things? Maybe yes. Are we helping when we reduce the amount of tea we take per day? Perhaps yes. Are we helping when we reduce the number of times you boil your kettle? Maybe yes. You know, and there are a lot of things that we can do at grassroots level, you know, and that can also help with whatever is happening at local level. For example, Reading Borough, what are they doing? What are their steps? What are the strategies? Are we aware of as people living in this Reading or in this borough? Are we aware of the strategies? What are they doing? Is that information being filtered down? So, and that's the reason why perhaps with Victor, we also be trying to penetrate into to see how those information can be filtered down to our people, because we need that trickle down information that can help our people to be more empowered. Because when we started in the beginning, the poll was suggesting that 80% of us are aware, but how much are we aware? You know, and what are we doing about it? Is it our business or is it or not our business? Are we bothered about it? So that border can also affect our mood on daily basis or perhaps on regular basis. So it's really important for us to see how our mood is also important. And when we talk about forests, just recently I was reading something, which I mean, for us Africans, we know anyway, but we don't write these things down, because they were talking about forest therapy, that when you go into the forest for a walk and all of those things, you get out feeling really refreshed. And in big cities like Tokyo, that's what they do. They actually prescribe that go into the forest for even 30 minutes and take a walk, you know, and you come out feeling a bit okay, because people are completely attached to their desk and offices in this big city. So it's important for us also as grassroots level to begin to prioritize or walking along river Thames or getting to the forest if we are not far from any forest, and just for 5, 10, 15 minutes and see what the advantage might be like, or taking a walk out in the space or just outside there, you know, when the environment is when it's not raining. But even when it's raining, the attire is what you need to change, because if it's raining, you can still get out if you have the right attire to get out with. So it's really important for us to prioritize those activities. So from a CBT perspective, we need to look at our mood state, and we also need to look after our own health, our well-being. And a lot of the time people talk about exercise, and I totally agree. Exercise can be quite helpful for us. It's not just about your mental well-being, but your physical well-being as well, because sometimes when we put on weight, you know, and other illnesses do come in. So my tip really is to look after yourself and use all the arrows that we talk about. Recycle, re-educate yourself and your children, re-examine what you're doing at home, whether it's contributing or not, and readjust your mindset around the climate, because it's actually happening, you know. And it doesn't matter who is the culprit, but we are all, because when we look at the poll this morning, we said man is responsible, so we are responsible. So it's important to readjust our mindset and also rearrange what we do now as we come out of lockdown. How are you going to manage and contribute towards the integrity of our environment? So on that note, I hope we all go away today feeling a little bit re-energized. I know the excitement that we talk about, we want that to go to maybe 100%. So thank you all, and I think we can go to the next phase or next phase. Thank you, Cicely.
James, Thank you so much for that. Always reinforcing the importance of our well-being, which is everything. Without our well-being, which is impacted by the climate change, and that's why it matters to us and goes a long way. I like the fact that you have mentioned the forest therapy. Yeah, those who came in the beginning, you'll have noticed that the script that was learning was on rainforest, and there were people having a good, relaxed walk. So it was there for a reason, just to emphasize the importance of nature and how we can connect with it. But if it is being damaged by a human activity, as you indicated in the last poll or question, that human activity has a lot to do with the climate change that we are experiencing. So if that damage is happening, then we lose out on our well-being. So on that note, I'll bring in Helen. Helen, has been doing fantastic work in our communities, and especially in the way of empowering communities, so to say. And so when I asked her to come in a very, very difficult not just difficult, but very tiring journeys, she agreed to come in and just share the last 10 minutes with us. And perhaps going forward, we can do more on this. Remember, we are saying we need to be the change that we seek. So Helen, please do tell us more.
Thank you very much indeed, Cicely, and thank you very much for inviting me to part of today's session. I'm really sorry I couldn't join for all of it, because it sounds like you've just had a really, really thoughtful discussions, and I love the themes that are coming out of the little tiny bit I've heard about the importance of taking action in the communities we're connected to, but also looking after ourselves in the light of climate emergency. So I'm Helen Garforth. I've worked with Italy before and know Cicely well from many different things. And I'm a director of a local social business, Just Ideas. And we specialize in supporting communities and organizations in all things to do with social and environmental justice. I think that's why Cicely sort of approached me. And in Reading, we've been very involved in Reading Borough Council and the Reading Climate Action Network's climate strategy. We led the public engagement process that fed into that strategy. We facilitated that. And we run every year the model climate conferences for school children in Reading that happen at the same time as the conference of the parties, the UN conference of the parties are happening nationally. So and just picking up on James's input a minute ago, we're also part of a new group called Climate Emergence, which is all about self-care in the climate emergency, and how as activists in all walks of life, but particularly around environment, we really need to look after ourselves alongside looking after our communities and the planet. So lots of really things that made me sit up and listen in what you were saying just now, and it's a privilege to have the opportunity to talk a little more. I just wondered if I'm going to put two questions in the chat here. One is, what impacts of climate change are you seeing in the communities you're connected to here in Reading, in West Africa, wherever that may be? And what are communities that you're connected to already doing about climate change? So we've heard a little bit about Reading's response earlier today. But I just wondered if anyone would like to, either in the chat or just sort of say a little bit about the impacts they're already seeing in communities and anything that is being done. So I'm opening up to the floor. You can say either type or just shout out if you've got something to contribute. Annette.
I can just say I'm from living in Reading. I think it's a good idea that Reading Borough Council is now allowing you to have a bin for your food waste that can be, go back into making fuel that we can use within our homes. Again, I think that's really a a great initiative, because for far too long, I've been thinking, what? There are other places who have been doing this and Reading hasn't. So yes, and I mean, the amount of, I don't realize how much peeling I do until my husband go out to put the bin out. He said, this is heavy to carry out. So, you know, it is so important, that is, and at least we feel we're doing something, you know, which is useful for all of us. And I think that's really a good strategy. I really am pleased with that. Yeah, I mean, I try to, you know, make my home as eco-friendly as I possibly can. But of course, it's expensive to do that. And again, another thing that you're saying, they're bringing electric cars. I mean, you know, who can afford to buy an electric car now, which would be good for our environment? But, you know, we were encouraged to buy diesel vehicles because that was supposed to be good for the environment. And now we find out it isn't. Are they going to help the public, you know, in large to, you know, give them some incentive to be able to change from, you know, the type of car. Our car's coming up now 10 years old. And to go into London, we're going to have to pay an extra charge for going into London. So, you know, it's great that we have these things, but I think there are got to be initiatives to help the public at large to try and adapt things that they need day to day, really.
Thank you.
That's what I've got to say.
Thank you, Annette, very much. And some really important things coming out there. One, that, you know, that there is stuff going on that people in places and communities can learn from about other places. So, you know, seeing that other places were doing food waste recycling, and Reading picking up on that. And also the fact that it's that behaviors that are eco-friendly or around climate change, it's not something that sits on its own. It's so connected with finance, with health, with transport, with all sorts of other things. So really illustrating the kind of complexity there. Anyone else got anything that they'd like? There's some nice things coming in the chat there about ideas. There are ideas in that leaflet that Nisa put in the chat earlier, and also, yeah, absolutely, this needing to act together, communities across communities. It's a global thing, that individuals are kind of connected into a globe that can connect together. Gurdip, you've got a contribution. You need to unmute yourself.
Now they're doing, so many communities are, so many countries, and the communities doing the solar panels, which is good, but I don't know how much incentive they give. You know, some people can't afford it.
Thank you. Another great example, and it's a change that I really see. You know, noticing solar panels on more places. Reading had a big initiative about it, but big fields of solar panels in other places, parts of North Africa really taking a lead on this, using their natural resource to really
in warm countries it's so useful. No, but the weather is not so good in this country, but in warm countries it is helping the environment.
Absolutely. So that, again, that feeling that this really is, it's a global problem, and to find the big solutions, it has to be a global attempt, a global collective. So when Cecily sort of talked to me about this, oh, and that's another really good point, James, that some of the things that we have learned in the pandemic about how to do things digitally can really help, I think. Partly it showed that the things we thought wouldn't be possible are possible, which I think is a really good lesson when we're looking at climate change. We didn't know that we'd be able to run businesses and schools and education and whatever online without face-to-face. Okay, it's not ideal at all, but there are things that were developed at speed because of the pandemic that, with that kind of can-do or must-do attitude, I think can really help us in looking for solutions around climate change. And the other thing that the pandemic really showed was that in a global crisis that obviously is, as is climate change, it's often those most on the margins or with least access to resource that suffer the most. And that's another lesson around the impact of global challenges like that on health inequalities, and climate change is going to be is already impacting most those who can least afford to adapt or move. Oh, it's brilliant. There are loads of examples of coming in of churches attaining eco status and organizations signing up to the Climate Change Partnership. I think we were interested, Cicely and I, was to maybe have, if there is interest in another session more focused on communities and climate change, what kind of questions might you like to ask or discuss? And then we can go away and have a bit of a think about sort of developing a learning session around communities and climate change. So maybe in this last for 2 minutes, any areas or questions that you would really like the opportunity to discuss a bit more and share learning on? Again, any comments, just shout out or pop them in the chat.
My question really will be how much inclusive are those local strategies when you look at grassroots communities? Are we really part of it? Are we inclusive? Are we able to be part of it? Or is there any gap? How can we engage with it? So that might be really important for us. As a community leader or champion, I need to understand whether my community is catered for when it comes to strategies to maintain the integrity of our environment, because we are all in this together.
That is a fantastic kind of lens to look at this through, James. I think that's a really brilliant suggestion. Any other sort of thoughts or questions or ways you might like to look at this topic?
Yes, I was going to say more on as an individual, what one can do within your home. And also maybe, I'm not sure whether any council or local authority has done a survey to find out, especially in the low income groups, how they are managing and how best they can move forward.
Great, thank you. Another really pertinent question to examine that's really relevant to all of us working in communities. Thank you. And let's have one last sort of question or thought or area that you'd like to look at, and we'll take those away and work something out. How can we better work with churches on this agenda? Churches and faith organisations. That's a really good question too. Brilliant. I've used my 10 minutes, Cicely. Thank you for that insight. And yeah, if it feels useful to you, I really would look forward to coming and having a little bit more time on this at a later date. Thank you, Cicely. Back to you.
So Helen, thank you so much for so kindly, despite being so tired, coming in and sharing those insights and also listening, hearing it for yourself. I believe it would have been different if I said it to you, but you have heard, you have listened, and that listening goes a long way in impacting change. And the most important thing, and which I was fearing, I think I shared my concerns with Victor and with you, Helen, but I wasn't sure how interesting this subject matter would be. But actually, looking at it and hearing that 80% of people are aware and would want to know more about it is a really positive thing. And I'll go back to what James has raised there. So the inclusivity in terms of the strategy, but also implementing it will go a long way in making that difference. And I think this is something that Victor would agree with. So Victor, I will leave you to give the last one in terms of how we move forward with this. You're on mute, Victor. Yeah.
It's such an important topic that we can't dispose of it at one sitting. We've only just scratched the surface. We need to have a better understanding of the issues and our response as individuals and as communities. And I say this because since Reading Borough Council changed its bin collection policy to introduce the food waste and a smaller bin, I have noticed from my neighbors that they seem to have increased the output of rubbish that they put out. Since it was introduced, I think back in April or May, my bin has never been full because I carefully pick what to recycle, what should go in the food waste bin, what should go in the recycling bin, in the normal rubbish bin. And bigger items I now stack until I can book a slot at the tip to take it down there. But I'm not seeing that. So it would be nice for people, for the strategy, whatever strategies are being developed, to have an education element in it. And it is that education element that we can share with our communities so that each and every one of us can make our input towards that. You see, we've got new offices that were built by the council. And we started that discussion way back in 2013. And I said to them, look, install, solar panels as part of the thing so we can save on energy. We're meant to be running a community center. And if that is the case, then there will be a high output in terms of the use of energy and utilities. So putting solar in place would help us to reduce, because the discussions had just been, started in earnest by then. And they said no. So there's a lot in terms of what we as individuals can do, what the authorities can do, and unless we all sing from the same hymn sheet, it'd be difficult for us to find answers or to make contribution to the solutions. So I think a follow-up session on this topic, I think is very much needed, so that we can look at, what we can do specifically as communities and getting the experts to advise us as community reps and leaders.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's 3 minutes past. So as we finish, I will wish you a good week, but also challenge you to think about the one small thing that you can do towards addressing the climate change that we are all experiencing and we have watched over the years. So thank you so much, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.
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 Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Have a good week.
You